So I'm going to walk through one of the concepts that I've been thinking about for review rounds. I say one of the concepts. It's the only thing I've been thinking about when it comes to review rounds. It might not cover all the cases, but it's just something that has been in my head, and I wanted to get it in wireframe form to get some feedback. So in this scenario that I'm going to walk through, an author has created a merge request, and they are going to assign it to 2 reviewers for review. The basic layout of the merge request is the same as it currently is in GitLab. So to start with, okay, so let's say that an author has created a merge request and they're ready to have it assigned to somebody for review. In this example, I've added an additional feature that would kind of not really predict, it would help you figure out who to select based on what labels you've applied. This is a feature that might be the worst idea ever. It's just something I was thinking. Because when it came to attention requests, we received a lot of feedback that people who received those attention requests didn't know what they were being requested to do. They would get attention request and they wouldn't really have an idea. There was no actionable item for them. So I'm trying to cover that in a few places here. But the first place is that, let's say I opened this merge request and it happens to touch Ruby files and some Vue files, and it also has to deal with the user experience. So I have applied these labels. In this case, it would magically know that these labels were special, and it would apply those as like reviewer roles almost. So because those labels are there, it says, hey, you should add a front end, a back end, and a UX reviewer. Again, a feature that doesn't need to exist. It's just something that was in my head. So in this case, the author would see that and then select the reviewers based on these roles. The roles aren't set to the user. So it's not like Casey is a backend engineer and the system knows that. It's that you know that you need to assign a backend engineer. You know that Casey's a backend engineer, so you assign Casey as the backend reviewer. So it's kind of up to the author. It's up to the users of the organization to know who does what, and that way we don't have to deal with like proper role-based permissions and that kind of stuff. So that was a long-winded thing that might not even end up becoming a feature, but here it is. So you select your reviewer right here. In this example, you can also post a note to that person saying, can you please take a look at this? I'm not sure about the specs, blah, 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 blah. We noticed that a lot of people, at least internally, tend to do this when they're assigning reviewers. They might specifically call out things that they want the person to look at, especially when they're assigning front end, back end, other things like that. They'll say, hey, Annabelle, can you look at the UX? Hey, other user, please look at the front end, especially these files, that kind of stuff. So this gives you the opportunity to do it in more of a formalized way. This is the review request note. And then once you submit these, once you submit this and you pick that reviewer, it shows up in the sidebar. In this example, you see that Maisie has been selected for front end, Casey has been selected for back end, and there has not been a UX reviewer selected yet. This is an example of the activity feed that we already have, but there's been a few changes. Well, the system notes have changed a little bit. So when it says author requested front-end review from Maisie, there's that option to kind of post a comment right on that system note. In this case, the author did not post one for Maisie, but they did post one for Casey. So you can see it in the system note. This is one system note entry. Author requested back-end review from Casey. And there's the note, and then the system notes keep going as usual, added label. So in this flow, every time a piece of review between Casey and the author happens, it's all posted to this same system note, and it just keeps growing and growing. So it's one big review object per review, if that makes any sense. Okay, so this author has assigned their reviewers, and they're kind of done. They're waiting for their review now. So if we go now over to what, let's see, I think Casey, because they're the backend reviewer. So this is what Casey's going to see. They'll get that to-do, their notification as usual. But when they come to that merge request from the to-do notification, or just when they just visit that merge request ever, they're going to see an alert at the top that says, author has requested a backend review from you. this is something that again feeds into that whole actionable, what do I do with this notification to do? I've been requested, but I don't know what to do. Here it is. It says right here, this is what you've been requested to do. You can click begin review or some other button. Maybe this takes you to the system note with more information. I'm not sure yet, but here it is. So they'll see this, they'll do their review, and this design was pulled straight from another feature we're working on that's going to be released soon, which is when you can finish your review with a summary comment that we're calling, and then you can also optionally approve it. And when you submit that, it submits all the comments on the code and this comment and potentially the approval and whatever quick actions that you happened to have input in this text field. So you submit the review, and then like I mentioned earlier, all of your comments and this comment will all be posted to that same system note. So it's all grouped together. So in this case, it says review in progress, and this is in the activity view. Author requested the backend review with their comment. It says Casey reviewed the MR. Here's their summary comment, and then it will also include all of the code review comments that are actually on the files themselves. And then you can kind of collapse it, expand it, whatever. I'm not sure about the flow there yet. And you can see that Maisie has not done the front end review yet. And then if you look at the sidebar here, there's an icon here that is, let's forget that for now because I actually forgot why I did that. Okay, moving on. Author has requested a front end review from Maisie, so this is the view that she sees. When she comes to the merge request, same thing, but they know that it's front end, and they do the same thing, except they think it's great. So they post their comment, their summary comment says looks amazing, they approve it, and the system note updates and says that it's completed. I would imagine it auto collapses perhaps because you don't need to see it anymore, but any other comments would be included here. And you can see that they have a check mark here where they've approved it. So now anyone that's going to come and do a subsequent review of this merge request is going to see front end has been approved. We're good to go for front end, at least in a vague sense. In GitLab, maybe we might need a maintainer to do another review, but they can see it now. No one's unassigning themselves. The other option is Casey, as we know, had some comments and needed further clarification. Maybe some changes were requested. So they don't have a check mark. They have just an icon that says, we'll say that there's a tooltip that says re-request review. I went back and forth on what the options need to be. So we can either, in a broad sense, it could be approved, requested changes, or commented. But I wonder if we even need requested changes or commented, or if it can just be approved or not. And not approved isn't necessarily a negative thing. It's just you need it to be approved before you can merge it. So inherently, it isn't. You've requested changes, or you've requested clarification, or you've requested further reviews from other people. You're bringing other people. It's not approved by you yet. So you have that icon right there. So if you started a review and you haven't approved it, then that's the only other option really, is a re-review. And then once they approve it, then eventually it'll become a check mark. I think that, so those are all the wireframes I have, and I'm trying to think if there are any other options. So yeah, in this also, the icon at the top in the top nav that has your merge requests that are either assigned to you or review requested from you. I think that for a first pass, it should just be, keep it the same if you have approved it or if you've reviewed it. So if you've reviewed it at all and you've submitted that review, whether or not you've approved it, then that should not appear in your top nav anymore. It should only appear as a badge item if you have an action to take. So if you get requested to re-review it or something like that. In the future, I'm still wondering if there's a point to the assignee field. If you're an author, then you're an author, and if you're a reviewer, you're a reviewer. I don't know right now if there is what the goal of the assignee section is now that we have reviewers. So that's another thing to think about. Maybe we'll remove that, but that's not really a part of this flow right now. I think that kind of covers most of it. And then, so in this example too, since Casey didn't approve it, they had comments, they passed it back to the author by submitting that review. The author would then address those. They'd either make more changes or they would comment here and maybe say why they made those changes or anything like that. And then it would also be added to this single review. So at the end, you might have several of these review objects that appear in the timeline, but they're all grouped together like this. So if you need to see, hey, did someone review this front end? Did they already catch this? You would just find that front end review and expand it, and you would see everything that was there. I think that covers it for now. There's definitely many ways we could go with this. This is just something that was in my head, wanted to get out and see what other people thought, and if it's heading in a direction that might be useful for others, that would be good to know. Or if it's terrible, that's fine too. Yeah, let me know. Thanks.